Great to have you back. Happy Thursday. I'm Booker Corrigan, and this is the Booker Corrigan Show. We got a nice rundown for you today. It's going to be fantastic. I got our segment, Hey Bubba, with my man Brian Bubba Burlace. Coming up, we're going to have a debate about college lacrosse national championship games. We're going to get into the movie of the week. I'll tease you. It sounds like you're saying pan. That's all I can tell you there. Then we're going to talk also about multi-sport athletes and the importance. The opener today, for those of you who may have known me in a previous lifetime, this time last year, I was 251 pounds. I've had a lot of people ask me, are you sick? And, I take it as a compliment because I really was. And if you need to look at Big Holmes over my shoulder, like that's Fat Booker. But I have had people either A, notice like, oh my God, what happened to Booker who ate Booker? And other people who have just simply said, are you okay? It's nice to have people ask that. My gal friend, Kate Zahn, who is one of my favorite people to spend time with, she actually informed me that a lot of my friends behind my back have been inquiring to her about my health. So I want everybody to know, yes, I am 100% healthy. I'm just losing weight because I really needed to. Lily Kaufman, who is a senior at Roland Park Country School. She is a senior in high school, and I hadn't seen her for a couple months, and she looked at me and said, geez, Book, you've really lost some weight. And that's when you start to know. I was actually spending time meeting her new nephew, Jackson Patrick Doyle, who has a great support group, some great people. Lexi's a great kid. And then, of course, my gal, Tanya McGrath, is constantly telling me that I don't need to lose any more weight, but I am going to try and lose a couple more pounds. So we'll see how this spring goes. It could be lofty aspirations there. But the weight loss, thank you for your concerns. I am healthy. There's no issue health-wise other than stupidity, which evidently is running rampant. Let's get into talking about and talking with our main man, Bubba Burlace. I will tell you this. As a multi-sport person and a believer in the value of multi-sports, I coached football, basketball, and lacrosse. I played ice hockey in college. I played lacrosse in college. I also was the worst high school football player maybe ever. I was the worst high school football player on our team. When we go to reunions for Trinity Pauling, I need to tell them how sorry I am that I missed that block, or I missed that play, or I dropped that. I mean, it was awful. So there's a value in learning a lesson about what the bench warmers feel like, what the guys who don't get quality minutes, the guys who don't get any minutes. If you're a star in one sport, there's nothing wrong with being the 7th or 8th or 9th guy on the basketball team or the 3rd string receiver on the football team, because you're going to learn a lot of lessons and you're going to support some of the kids on that football team, that soccer team, that hockey team, that they're going to make all conference. You're not going to get any good minutes, but you're going to now feel as a lacrosse player, which that's our basic viewership here. You're going to feel better as a star player having known the role. There's a real value in being a role player. And that's going to be our first topic with my man, Brian Bubba Burlace. We are going to bring him onto the line as soon as we possibly can. I just told my man, Sebastian Martinez, that I cannot do anything that involves pushing buttons.
Booker, what's up?
Hey, Bubba! How you doing, my man? Everything good?
Everything's great. How about you?
Happy Thursday, and I'm flying to Sarasota, Florida tomorrow, so next week I'll be all sunburnt, and I'll get to see my girl Tanya. So, a little mini vacation for El Libro.
Definitely well-deserved, I'm sure. I mean, it must be a grind doing these podcasts.
Well, I will tell you I do a little bit more than just the podcast.
So you got more than the 23 minutes a week?
Yeah, exactly. More than the 23 minutes a week. So, and we're getting there. I was just talking about the multi-sport athlete and the value of being a role player. Like, not even just supporting the role players. If you're an all-conference lacrosse player, Brian Burlace, who's on the line with us right now, was a first-team All-American defenseman, best defenseman in college lacrosse in 1992. So it's safe to say you made all-conference in high school. Did you ride the pine in any sports, or did you have guys who dove on that grenade and were just practice guys for St. Mary's back in your day?
Uh, we definitely had some practice guys. I mean, myself, I started. I played 2 years of junior varsity, so I was on JV 2 years, which is kind of unusual nowadays. Everyone thinks it's the end of the world if your child doesn't make varsity as a freshman, or God forbid as a sophomore.
Yeah, right.
But the way that Coach Moorhead liked to do it, and we still at St. Mary's now look at it where if you're not going to play, if you're not going to be a starter or get major minutes, we like you to play on JV. And for me, it was awesome. I got to I built my confidence up. I was kind of the leader, the captain of the JV team, and it wasn't that tremendous of a step when I came into varsity the next year. So a lot of our kids, they do play a year or two of JV. So you do see that freshman year. You see some more role players that until they're getting used to it. At some of these schools, you can only put 10 guys on the field at once. So, you're going to have another 20 or 30. And if you look at the college sports now, where they got 45 guys sitting on the bench. So, if you don't have guys that buy in and do the role, play their role and do things for the betterment of the team, it's going to be a disaster.
And as a coach at St. Mary's, how often are you talking to kids about them getting out and doing another sport, or at least stepping away from lacrosse and, playing pickup hoops? I think is almost like a varsity level crossover. Pickup hoops, I think, is phenomenal for kids if they want to be a good lacrosse player. Where's your thought on pickup hoops?
Yeah, I think pickup hoops is great. I mean, I don't think you see enough of any sort of pickup games nowadays. It seems like unless there's an official and coaches involved, they're not doing anything.
And
so
20 parents bringing snacks.
Exactly, at the orange slices and so I think pickup hoops is great. I mean, our kids and my sons, they love going out and playing 3x. On the lacrosse field, with the small goal, and I think it teaches them how to be creative, how to do offense, how to patrol police themselves. If a kid's is it a foul or isn't it a foul? You guys figure it out.
You call it.
Exactly, you call it, and the kid's being an ass. Well, how are you going to deal with it? Are you going to solve it yourself, or are you going to get pushed around? Or so I think sometimes it's great for these guys to figure stuff out on their own, as opposed to a parent or a coach or an official doing everything for them.
Yep, I totally agree. Brian Burley's on us. And Bubba, you just made a confession, and I want to revisit it because I think there's so much value in it. 1992, you were voted the best defenseman in college lacrosse. It's the Schmeiser Cup, I believe. Or Schmeiser Trophy.
Schmeiser Trophy, award.
Yeah,
no
award.
Cup. I wish it was a cup.
I know.
We
could drink out of it. Get some wings with Vic
Yeah,
Lilly.
just a little plaque.
The confession that you made was you played JV lacrosse as a sophomore in high school. And like you also said, parents flip out if their kid is on JV as a sophomore. It's so incredibly tangled. These coaches are helping young men and young girls become the best possible version of themselves. And sometimes that means I'll see you next year because you're not ready for that level. It's confounding for them, but I really do want parents to hear me when I say Brian Burley did a pretty good job in college lacrosse, but he played JV as a sophomore in high school. That's remarkable. Truly remarkable.
Yeah, and there was a lot of the kids that I played with that were sophomores. They wound up moving up to varsity the next year, and a good portion of them went on to play Division I lacrosse and have success. So it's about developing. It's every kid's going to be on a different timeline, physically, mentally.
Developmentally,
you see the kids that come in and maybe they're bigger and stronger as freshmen, but they still need to develop. It can also be from a maturity standpoint. It can be tough being a 15-year-old and all of a sudden you're thrown in there with 18 and 19-year-olds.
Yep.
you can get yourself in some trouble if the kid's doesn't have his head on straight.
What you just alluded to, those 15-year-olds being on the bus rides home from a game with an 18 or 19-year-old. Those are different stories coming back home.
If you're looking at the Baltimore schools, you can throw it at 20, 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds possibly.
I love how you differentiated Baltimore. Like St. Mary's,
they would be 18.
St. Mary's, a bunch of 14-year-olds, right? Every kid on that St. Mary's team last year was 12. I tell you what, you and Vic Lilly are the greatest coaches in the world to be able to take a Lightning B team to the A Conference Championship game last year.
It is amazing, isn't it?
My man Maverick, what's he, 9 now at Yale?
He's almost double digits.
On the phone with my man Brian Bubba Burlace in our segment we call Hey Bubba. And now we're going to move on to the debate. I gave you notice. I didn't even give you a deadline. But I said we got to pick which NCAA men's lacrosse Division I championship game was the better game. And I said you can't pick 89 because that's basically the top of the mountain. At some point this spring, we will talk about the 1989 Syracuse-Hopkins game. But for this, I told you can't pick that. I told you I'm taking 1991 Carolina over Hopkins at Palmer Stadium. I was there. You took 2010 Duke over Notre Dame, 6-5 in overtime. Tell me your rationale for that, Bubba.
Well, I was going to pick, obviously, the Maryland win over Ohio State, but that was kind of an ass kicking. It wasn't that exciting.
Not that great a game.
So, and it's pretty predictable that's what I would have went with. Looking at some of the other games, I thought, obviously there's been some great games over the years. That was kind of cool because it went to overtime, and from obviously 6-5 is a great defensive battle, and I think that it was pretty ironic that Alon Palmitti wins the faceoff, goes down and scores to win the game in a defensive battle. So I thought that was pretty cool, and in the scope of what's happened in the last 10 years since that game, that was kind of the win that was Duke's first win. Sure, I believe. And actually, I think it was
6-year seniors on that team.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, going back to the older kids, right? Yeah. So they had kids that that went through a lot of adversity with that whole scandal down at Duke, and that was the year Coach Janowski won the championship, and they've really been propelled since then. I don't know how many they've got since then, but I think it was a validation for him being a great coach.
Yeah, they won it in 13 and 14 back-to-back years. So once over Notre Dame again. I don't know why you keep bringing up the Corrigan family losses, but I love cousin Kev and the Irish.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, someday the Notre Dame Fighting Irish will win the national championship. I just think that it's going to work. And if you need some kind of evidence, empirical evidence from years past, in 2012, Loyola went on to win it, and they weren't even picked in the preseason top 25. So it's interesting to see it, and they went 18-1 in that year. So it was certainly a remarkable run for Loyola. But it's
so you're saying there's a chance.
So you're telling me there's a chance, and we will get into our movie of the week. But I got to tell you what, I was in Palmer Stadium watching Carolina Hopkins. Great list of names. Obviously, your man Mike Burnett, Johnny Haas, Tommy Sears. Right? I don't know how you didn't vote for these guys. Peter Vogel, Dougie Hall, Steve Stenerson, the head of U.S. Lacrosse, was facing off for Carolina that day. Well, I also know it's Carolina and Hopkins, which are two schools that Maryland grads don't tend to root for too much. Hopkins-wise, you had Brendan Schneck, Lance Schneck, Howard Offit taking face-offs. My man Brian Holman in the goal, the head coach at Utah. And, of course, the game, Haswell Franklin was a defenseman on that team. But that game will always go down as the Jeff Cook show, the late Jeff Cook, who passed away a little recently, but certainly one of those guys. It was a remarkable effort by Hopkins. Controversy, right? You talked about the Notre Dame-Duke game going to overtime and the excitement. There was some controversy in my Hopkins-Carolina game. Hopkins scored a goal late that went through the net. There was a hole in the net. And they show in Sports Illustrated, they show a referee putting his fist through, a Hopkins player putting his fist through the net saying, like, dude, the ball went through here. And the refs are like, no goal. Obviously, this was 81. They didn't have replay. They barely had the game on ESPN. Or may have even been on ABC's.
Yeah,
Wide World
shockingly,
of Sport.
Carolina catches a break like that, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, UVA caught a break last year against the Terps, too. I think we alluded to that last week. My man Brian Bubba Burlace on the phone with me. Got to love having Bubba on the show. First team All-American at Maryland. Also played with Blake Wynot, who, let's be honest, the Wiz. You got John Brothers. Hey, I got a question. Did you ever play with Kip Fulks? Or was he after you?
He would have been. Kip went to, I think it was Essex for a year, then transferred in.
Okay.
So his freshman class his class were freshmen when I was a senior.
Okay.
But he wasn't there as a freshman.
I thought he was after you.
Yeah, Danny Radebaugh and Greg Nealon and John Brothers and all those guys, Bordy. And so he was involved with those guys in that class, but we didn't actually play together.
Right. And Kip was a beast. And Tucker Radabus going in the Hall of Fame soon. Dom Stars had just tweeted that out, so it's nice to have that happening. Those Radebaugh kids, they were just pure grinders. Good God.
Yeah, they definitely were. Tuck had a heck of a career. Danny was an animal.
Isn't it weird?
He's another guy that we talked about playing JV. He really only played 1 year. He played, I think, 2 years at JV, I believe. And I don't think he played a ton on varsity as a junior. And then, had a very, very good senior year. And next thing you know, he's a defenseman of the year, 4 years later. So it's you never know how kids are going to develop.
And it's also, don't write a kid off because he's on JV as a sophomore. It's almost in some ways, it's the coach saying, I don't need you flipping burgers on the sideline. I need you developing on JV with the ball in your stick or guarding the number one guy or making saves, taking all the face-offs. That's what I need you to do so that you can then come do them for the varsity in a year or two.
Yeah, there's no question.
Let's get into the movie of the week, which is Step Brothers. Everyone's already figured that out. Now, first question, I know obviously you got BJ and you got Colin. Have you ever seen your son use a bicycle as a weapon?
We've seen just about every. I have another son, Gavin, who's a freshman. The youngest of the three boys. He tends to get hit with a lot of weapons. So, yes, no question.
He takes a lot of shrapnel. Gavin does. I haven't met him yet.
He likes to be called Dragon as well.
Nighthawk. I love that. Now, Chris Gardocki, does he live anywhere near your neighborhood?
No.
Okay.
Not that I know of.
Okay, and have you ever attended the Catalina Wine Mixer?
I love the fact that now you can get the Natty Lights seltzers, the Catalina Wine Mixer.
Yeah, Catalina Wine Mixer. Nothing wrong with that. Hello, Miss Lady. That's possibly one of the best things I've ever seen. Is that the other one is
You haven't teabagged the drum set lately.
No, I haven't. But I have done. I did a rap video for Prestige Worldwide, and it's called Boats and Hoes. And my family, one of our favorite things to do was sing "Sweet Child of Mine" in the car. We really had a good momentum there.
Yeah, the voice of an angel. It's kind of like a combo of Fergie and Jesus, right?
Yes, exactly. Now, the other real worry I have, and you tell me whether I should be worried, because a man who shall be remain nameless, was seen walking into our bathroom here at Corrigan Sports, and he was carrying a Good Housekeeping magazine. Should we worry about that?
You are best friends, aren't you? Yeah.
Did we just become best friends?
Good housekeeping. That was when the selections were getting light. You always go there.
Yeah. Now, Bubba, how much old-timer lacrosse have you played in the last 10 years? You play any Masters stuff, Grandmasters, Super?
No, I haven't
what are you,
played
75?
I am. What am I? I'm almost 50, so I probably haven't played in close to 10 years, I think. We played down at the beach. I guess that was over 35s. But yeah, it's probably been close to 10 years. I think it's time to watch some of the younger guys run around out there. Every time you go down to those tournaments and up at Placid, and you always hear about this guy did this to himself, and
Oh, yeah.
Achilles or his hamstring. I'm like, you know what? I'm much better telling people I was good back in the day and yelling at them on the sideline.
Let them speculate.
It's
exactly.
much easier.
Yeah, I coached the Riley's Oyster team in the ALL, which is like what Mount Washington MLC and all those teams used to be. They now have obviously the NLL, PLL, and MLL, but they still have the ability for guys to run around all spring long. Play at Norris Field or play over at Loyola Blake Field. So it's a fun little time for those guys, the 20-somethings. And all I do is coach. It's not too bad.
Coach, and then I'm sure you hold court afterwards?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Shocking that you would realize that. Yeah, it's certainly, I don't have to worry about Chris Gardocki and any dog feces, but so that's good. Bubba, we are going to have a future debate about another NCAA championship game. So I want you to you got 2010 Duke, Max Quinzani, Ned Crotty, Dan Wigreiser was in the goal. He had been yanked earlier in the season, then comes back. Steve Schoeffel, one of those guys who could break a kid down. For Notre Dame, David Earl, Zach Brenneman, Scotty Rogers, and my man Andrew Irving. Awesome ground ball machine in the midfield. What about those lineups back to the 2010 game? Who impressed you the most? Because I know who impressed me the most.
I mean, I think defensively they played great. Quinzani for Duke always, he was a smaller kid. He was really quick and seemed like he was constantly able to get topside and scored a lot of goals. I kind of, looking back at the game, I remember I was at the game, watching the game. I had the kids up there, and it was it was a great game back and forth. I remember obviously Constable scores the winning goal. He seemed like he was all over the field as a vacuum. But for the most part, I don't really care too much about Duke or Notre Dame, so I wasn't that involved in it. I was kind of just watching it,
just appreciating the defensive efforts. I'll tell you what, I thought Ned Crotty as an attackman was as slick as they come. Who's the hardest attackman you ever had to guard? Who gave you fits?
Denny Goldstein gave me some fits.
Okay.
He lit me up one year in the ACC tournament. He's that guy that
I love Denny.
He wasn't real big, he wasn't real strong, he wasn't real fast, but he was a heck of a lacrosse player.
Yep.
Denny was great. John Blatchley was a really good player, a local guy. I got to practice against a guy, Mark Douglas, who was went in the Marines for 4 years, so he was I don't know how old he was, 26 or 27-year-old when he was there, an angry Marine running around, against us. He was a nightmare to live with, to play with.
Did you ever have to guard Billy Miller, who played at Hobart and then played for Team USA a bunch?
Played him a bunch of times when, I guess, back in the MAB Paints and the Philly versus, I played Green Turtle. He was, tough guy. Very quick, great first step. Could take a beating, got up, and he definitely wasn't shy about getting to get topside across the middle. Yeah,
he was as tough as they come, and he was also, he maxed out at like 137 pounds, as a college senior. But I had Pat McCabe on a prior show, and one of the questions I asked him was, "Who's the toughest guy you ever had to guard?" And this is a guy who practiced with Gary and Paul Gate and Tommy Marachek and John Zolberti. And his answer, without thinking twice, was Billy Miller.
Billy can make you look bad.
Yeah. He'd be lost on the end line, and he'd be shooting.
No doubt. He could really make you look bad.
He was a tough nut. So it was certainly nice to hear some high praise for a guy who I was coaching at Villanova, and he was coaching at Penn way back in 1992, where our man Brian Berlace was voted Defenseman of the Year. Bubba, thanks for the time, man. I love you. We're definitely going to have to do this again. And I want you to give me a better, like 2009 Syracuse-Cornell overtime game. Pretty good game. Last second tie-up goal. And then, Syracuse wins it. I thought that was a good game. 1993, Syracuse over Carolina at Byrd Stadium in Maryland. Last second goal, I think Matt Ritter or Jamie Archer, one of those two Syracuse guys.
Good. I don't really like anything orange, Booker. So eliminate any orange from the conversation.
They win it every other year. I mean, at one point it was like Princeton,
That's a
Syracuse,
problem.
Princeton, Syracuse, Virginia, Syracuse, Virginia, Syracuse. So they're always there. Good gravy. So, and shout out to my man Tommy Marichek. Yeah, shout out to my man Tommy Marichek. Scored goals in 56 straight games, which is a couple more games than my streak.
That's pretty incredible.
Fun. I think my longest streak was 1. Which
it was great while it lasted, though, wasn't
it? Let's go streaking. Right? You got it, brother. Hey, we'll talk soon.
All right, see you, Buck.
You got it. Great to have my man Brian Bubba Burlace on the show in our segment we like to call Hey Bubba. That's our show for this week. Thanks to Sebastian Martinez for pushing the right buttons. I'm Booker Corrigan reminding you, you only get one shot at today.